Let's talk about the Mgtow philosophy and how it can help you save your life. A lot of the men in Mgtow would argue over the term Mgtow philosophy, as well as Mgtow movement and Mgtow mindset. I believe that this is primarily an argument about semantics, which is simply the meaning of words. However, there may be a distinction between the ideas and principles that encapsulate the fundamental Mgtow mindset and the mindset of Versus. The concept of a short-lived social movement is acceptable, but I don't see a problem if someone who is just learning about Mgtow refers to it as the movement. I believe that Milo Yiannopoulos wrote an article a few years ago about the male sexiness, and I believe that article brought a lot of attention to this area of discussion. The article is known as the male sexiness. So words, people need to be creative in how they use words, and I have no problem with it. However, it's basically a philosophy or a set of ideas, and it's not my place to weigh in on that. To strictly define or delineate what that philosophy is, for any individual man, but I think that implicit within the phrase men going their own way is one of the most important principles related to Mgtow and its freedom. You are directing its course. It's not men not having sex with women, okay? I know a lot of men immediately jump to that conclusion, but that's not what it is. What it is, rather, is men recognizing themselves as independent individuals. That has to take responsibility for yourself and then go your own way in life. Now, does this preclude working with other people? Does this preclude working at a job? Of course not. Does this preclude having a relationship with someone of the opposite sex? Does this preclude having a relationship with someone of the opposite sex? Does this preclude having a relationship with someone of the opposite sex? Does this preclude having? I don't believe that is what it means at all, but it does mean looking out for your own interests and seeing and recognizing yourself as a discrete individual. This is one of the reasons why this is such an important topic to discuss. We are a part of a society, a culture, and a system in which you have relationships with some people and many people who want to use you but don't really care about your interests in life. You have these relationships because we live in this society, culture, and system. I know it's hard to believe, and you're probably right that it is. It's actually hard to believe for an honest man who isn't looking to cheat anyone else that other people are trying to cheat him, though. It is an unusual thought because it almost requires the idea of a very combative mindset towards the entire situation and for a very strong and capable man. This is an unusual thought because it almost requires the idea of a very combative mindset. You don't want that, you know what I mean, like if you have a backyard or something. You don't want that. Okay. I'm not going to go into it, and I'm not going to go into that either. I'm not going to make any animal analogies to you today. However, if you have a backyard that's full of a bunch of bulls, that's fine. First of all, you probably won't even be able to keep them pinned up together because they are going to attack each other. However, let's just say that they're all out there okay, and you do not want to start waving red flags in front of them. You just don't want to get dressed in your brightest red outfit and try to run through the herd of balls. You just don't want to do that. It is not a good idea, okay? I'm just putting that out there in case this ever happens to you. Don't do that. You can do a lot of different things. I'm just putting that out there. But don't do that, okay? Moving on. Mgtow is an indictment of pathological altruism. Now, within civilized societies, what you're generally raising are men who can work together and are intelligent. That is what your system is building you into. You need to build those things in order to perpetuate the system, and that is what we've done, and now it's gone way too far with women wanting equal rights. That is what your system is building you into. You need to build those things in order to perpetuate the system. But without the right to equal responsibility, women are no more qualified to lead a country's foreign policy than men are qualified to have children. The same holds true for the reverse. It's just not in them to do that. On the other hand, women seem to want to apply the principles of motherhood in a competitive world, and that's exactly what's happening. A female mindset regarding how we behave socially has become dominant, and there's a reason why there haven't been any great matriarchies throughout the history of humankind. They fall apart there because they are unable to maintain themselves, which is why it is essential to understand that you, as a distinct and independent individual looking out for your own best interests, have the option of also being part of a group if that is something you would like to do. If you are a free and responsible individual, then you have a responsibility to look after yourself. If you are following your own path, then you have a responsibility to protect your own interests. If you want to keep your interests separate from those of others, then you must take care of yourself. It is very safe, isn't it, to be a part of the group and to not have any definite decisions for yourself, but to just follow the herd, and in some situations, I would recommend doing that. It is actually prudent in many situations, or at the very least, you go along to a point. My father told me a story about when he was in France during World War II. And they had instructed him to, dig their foxholes, and he went off and dug his foxhole away from the group, or a foxhole away from the group, and then they asked him, why are you doing that? And he explained that it was during the night when we were being attacked. They're going to launch an assault on this region, and I can't afford to be here when they do. They instructed him to dig his foxhole over here, stating, well, you have to dig your foxhole over here, and he did so. Of course, and then without a doubt, he traveled to the other foxhole, where he presumably spent the night, and only returned here the following morning. He didn't tell me whether anything had happened or not, but the idea of going along with the group requires you to look out for yourself first and foremost. It's okay if it's a conscious decision that you can take it back whenever you want, but it's an abdication of responsibility if you're just going along with the group because you don't want to disagree. If it's a conscious decision, you can take it back whenever you want. And you don't want to upset the group, and you don't want to think for yourself because, well, you know what's going to happen if you do that. It's going to come back to haunt you. That is an act of weakness and forwardness, and while that is acceptable behavior for a child, it is not acceptable behavior for a young adult. However, as a young adult, you may be able to afford to make that mistake once or twice in your life. But other than that, don't worry about it at all. This is why identity politics is so unworthy, because it doesn't preclude the idea that there might be some valid conflict that people ought to talk about. Again, this is why identity politics is so unworthy. But if we just compare men and women, you already know the answer to that question. Women versus men, people of a certain race versus people of a different race, ethnicity versus ethnicity, you understand what I mean, and you know that this is evading the individual personal responsibility that is being asked of you. It would appear that you are aware that a person's level of intelligence influences the extent to which they are capable of dealing with the aforementioned matters, as well as the amount of experience and education they have in this area. It seems like the masses of people and the majority of people in difficult circumstances tend to go that route. The likelihood of them going that route increases as the difficulty of their situation does as well. They organize themselves into groups, and, for the most part, they conform to the standards set forth by those groups. I'm just pointing out that Mgtow is self-determination, which is freedom, and expressing my hope that you'll be able to exercise responsibility in light of that. Otherwise, you give up your ability to make your own decisions and join the group, at which point you begin to rely on the others in the group. However, the possibility of cooperating with others in a setting like this is not eliminated. You can if you want to and you choose to, but you should be aware of the risks because the situation is the same with the relationships with other women. You understand exactly what I mean. It's like, well, Mgtow means that the men are celibate, but then it's like, no, it doesn't mean that, and why on earth would you think it does? When you consider that if you educate someone on proper nutrition and diet, then they will never be able to enjoy food again, you have to wonder if you have lost your mind. You should know that the concept behind this is that a man should be conscious of the fact that a woman's nature is to be a discrete, self-determining individual. If he then chooses to interact with anyone, regardless of the circumstances, he is, of course, free to do so. Because of this, you are aware that it is highly likely that they are a part of the herd and that they are going to destroy him. You are also aware that they are looking to destroy him, so you should look even at other men who come into Mgtow. They are not the Mgtow, rather, they are just a bunch of angry men who have been wronged and want to be a part of a community. After that, they come up with a set of rules and then say, I'm good at this and I'm part of the group, but they're bad at that and they're not part of the group. This is part of my group, but that is not part of my group. They are under the impression that it is Mgtow because they refer to it as Mgtow, but it does not adhere to any of the fundamental ideas or core principles that are associated with Mgtow. I'm not trying to tell people what they can and can't do, rather, I'm trying to give people some insight to the situation that they're in so that they can make intelligent and informed decisions. This is one of the most fundamental insights. I'm not trying to tell people what they can and can't do. That you can have is that women are not what you imagine them to be, they are not Disney princesses, they are not the purpose of your life, they are not the solution to all of the problems that you face in your life. Men, on the other hand, tend to elevate and idealize the female body, or at least this is how it is for many of them when they are brought up in some kind of Western cooperative system. And it's a myth that they worship men and the concept of getting together with men and boys. What they really worship is women and the idea of getting together with women. They don't worship men or the concept of getting together with men. Because they are unaware of this fact, they are under the impression that how women feel about men is the same as how they themselves feel about women. And it doesn't happen very often that the man romanticizes the woman to the point where he actually says something along the lines of, if I can get together with this woman, then all of the problems in my life, all of the suffering in my life, the difficulties and sacrifices in my life will have meaning in getting together with her. This is a male trait, not a female trait, and she views men as expendable resources. This is not a thing that women do. Because of this, our society has developed in such a way that men appear bewildered when they find out that their wives are divorcing them after the man has been laid off from his job. And he's having a tough time of it, and he needs her to stand by him, and he's at his most critical time, and she dumps him for his boss who makes more money, and the man just doesn't get it. And he's down on his luck, and he needs her to stand by him, and he's at his most critical because he has created this fantasy in his own mind, along with the help of the media, conditioning, and training provided by the institutions of our civilization. He believes it to be true. Entertainment, media, education, politics, social interaction, expectations, law, custom, practices, are these things done with women not as much right? As in, you don't need to control them and break them like you do with the men now. From my point of view, I could talk quite a bit about Ayn Rand and objectivism in relation to Mgtow. I could talk about Nietzsche's concept of the herd mentality, or I could talk about freedom and free markets and how they relate to Mgtow. I believe both of these things to be essential components of Mgtow. The idea that a civilization or culture is built on a kind of master morality in which people take charge and do good work, that is, work that is effective and work done correctly, like building city walls, is referred to as versus master morale. And they're good, sturdy walls that do their job, and you would judge everything in life according to how well it did its job as a meritocracy once you have that in place right. Once you have that, you can master morality. When you have constructed really nice city walls, when you have enough food, and when you have enough of your fundamental needs met, then you can develop another group of people, and they will be able to expand. Because you are able to take care of them, and I'm not talking about children here, although yes, you do need to be able to take care of children and you do need an abundance of resources for that, but no, I'm talking about other things. I am referring to a slave class, also known as a working class, a labor class, or a working class that is incapable of performing good work on their own independently. But they can help, and they can work for someone who has already put these things in place. A working class, now you know that over time this system is going to become more stratified. They can be a worker for someone who has already put these things in place. For example, those at the top of the hierarchy will amass more resources, while those at the bottom will find it progressively more difficult to work their way to the top. However, they still have a significantly better life by working for somebody who has already built something productive than they would if they tried to build something productive for themselves on their own. Because I believe that acknowledging this cycle will help you prepare for the eventuality that your working class is going to outbreed your productive class, and that as a result, they are going to flip the values of the system. And it appears that this is largely what took place in Rome with Judeo-Christian principles and ideas. This is not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself, because the world is not simply a game of survival of the fittest, but it is something that has taken place. The fact that it is not a reevaluation and a rebalancing of these value sets, as you may already know, is the primary source of the conflict that we are experiencing. Now, in many ways, the concentration of your media is centered in the cities, which control large sections of the population that are reliant on government assistance. They will do what the group tells them to do because the dynamics of the group are emphasized to a much greater degree at these lower levels. Because it's peer-to-peer, the people involved are allowed to go their own way despite the fact that they don't have a lot of productive skills. Since they are a part of the group and depend on the system, the people who are a part of the system are the ones who monitor and ensure that the other members of the group conform to the system, the rules, and the social norms. Based on this, they decide where they stand within the group. This is exactly what I was referring to earlier when I was talking about the individuals who come into Mgtow, call themselves Mgtow, then create a whole bunch of rules and then say that this individual follows them. Because that individual does not follow them, it follows that I am a great Mgtow and that they are a bad Mgtow. However, this is not what Mgtow is about, rather, it is an example of identity politics. That is an attempt to overthrow a master morality, an objective reality-based reality, and a meritocracy, and you need to realize that this is exactly what is being destroyed in Western civilization at this very moment. This is the reason why good, hardworking, strong, and professional people are in a lot of trouble. In any case, I may have bitten off a little bit more than I can chew here in this video explaining the philosophy of Mgtow and how it saves lives, and this is just the beginning. In any case, this is only the tip of the iceberg, and I'm going to have to leave it at that for the time being. Thanks for watching.